state television company Western Armenia represent the most important news for today. Good day. Today's podcast. 15th session of the National Assembly, Western Armenia. Greek City Times published an article about genocide committed in Voskepar. Baku discusses Tigranakert. France wars, attacks against Armenia and Ukraine are the same. The citizens of Artsakh cannot get an ID card. Sargis Galstyan returned to Armenia from Stepanakert and was arrested. Bronze statue of the Goddess Anahit will be exhibited in Yerevan. On April 3, on the Skype online platform, the 15th session of the National Assembly of the Republic of Western Armenia was held, during which the first president of the Republic of Western Armenia, Mr. Armine, made an opening speech. He spoke about the importance of adopting the draft law to be discussed during the session. During the session, the chairperson of the National Assembly, Ms. Agatangeghos, once again reminded on the draft of the new law, which was presented by the government of the Republic of Western Armenia. During the session, the draft was discussed in details. The draft of the law were put to the vote. As a result, the laws were adopted and approved by the National Assembly by the absolute majority of the votes of the deputies present at the session. They also discussed the events planned and to be held for April. An agenda issue were also discussed in the session. Mr. Armine summarized the session. He thanked the deputies for their active participation for the adoption of the much-needed laws. Mr. President in his speech specifically mentioned that for the Armenian nation and Armenian in this critical period, it is important to make pro-Armenian and pro-patriotic decisions and to adopt laws which are an important factor for the progress of statehood. He emphasized, today we talked about our laws and homeland. We will do everything to protect our statehood and homeland, the rights of our Armenian people. The fact that we were able to unite and make important decisions in this short time shows that we are on the right path. We need to expand our influence. The Greek newspaper Greek City Times published an article about the Armenian Voskepar, presenting the historical events of the 19th and the memories of the witnesses. A genocide was committed against Armenia 33 years ago by the Soviet Army and the Azerbaijan Army. In 1991, at the night of May 5, the units of the 4th Army of the Soviet troops, which were stationed in the territory of Soviet Azerbaijan and the Azerbaijan Army, using helicopters, tanks and heavy artillery, closed the entrances to the village of Voskepar in the Noyembeyan region of Soviet Armenia and entered the village. It was noted that the units of the Soviet Army entered the village and the Azerbaijan police blew up one car, as a result of which 2 civilians were killed and 7 civilians were seriously injured. After learning about what happened in Voskepar, 20 officers from the Noyembeyan police department and 3 civilians tried to come into the village through the forest to protect the residents. 11 of them were brutally killed, and the others were caught and taken to Ganzak city prison, where 3 more died. The units of the Soviet troops captured and handed over to Azerbaijan's 45 Armenian policemen who were in the village and defended it. They were also tortured in the Azerbaijan prison. On May 8, as a result of Soviet army shelling, 3 more civilians died in Voskepar village. 33 years ago, in 1991, early in the morning, on May 6, the police department of Noyembeyan fell into a trap, which was organized by the Soviet army and Azerbaijan police. The newspaper also quoted the memories of the witness who told about those terrible events. Baku started to use the excavation materials, drawings and pen drawings of Armenian archaeologists in illiterate style. Of course, the accusations don't stop that we excavated illegally, that we hid something, that we brought crushed stones from other places and placed it in Tigranakert, but the progress is obvious. They try to deny us by showing our own work done, that is a half-baked mentor style, and sometimes just mocking them. The Tigranakert of Artsakh, which is now under the control of Baku after 44-day war, is located in the Sahakyan region of Artsakh, in the inner valley of the second largest river of the highlands, Agatangeghos. The city was founded in 19th BC by the Armenian king Tigran the Great. Traces of the city were discovered and in 2005 carried out archaeological excavations in its territory. In 2006-2020 by the Artsakh expeditions of the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography of the National Academy of Sciences of the Republic of Armenia. Tigranakert of Artsakh is the only one of the many settlements named after Tigran who was located has been precisely determined and which has been subjected to archaeological research. Based on the rich archaeological material excavated in 10, the Archaeological Museum of the city was created. During the 44-day war, Tigranakert became an enemy shelling area. As a result, the archaeological site of Tigranakert was completely destroyed. Artsakh authorities and our research team could not allow Tigranakert Archaeological Museum to lose it completely. Museum collections have been evacuated and are in a safe place. Archaeological findings of Tigranakert excavations are the property of Artsakh people. After the 44-day war, the Tigranakert monument, which is one of the essential samples of civilization and culture, has become one of the slogans of Azerbaijan propaganda. From authorities of Baku to archaeologists, the monument is being devalued. For example, the early Christian church of the city is presented as a bathhouse. The park of Royal Well Springs has been turned into a place of eating cows. France's Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs Stepanakert announced at a joint press conference with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Paris about the threat to Armenia's territorial integrity by Baku. French Ambassador Olivier de Cogniti announced this on his official page, posting the full version of Stepanakert speech. We reaffirm our commitment to the territorial integrity of Armenia, which is now being issued by Baku. And let me say how worried we are about that, given that Baku's rhetoric is getting out of control, said Sejourne. Stepanakert expressed concern regarding the increase of false information coming from Baku, which tends to assign responsibility for the escalation to Armenia. Escalation which today only Armenia wants to avoid. We see many similarities with that Russia applies to Ukraine, said the French foreign minister, calling for attention to this issue 6 months before the COP29 in Baku. This is the first time when the similarity of attacks on Ukraine and Armenia is discussed at such a high diplomatic level. The war against Armenia, the occupation of Artsakh, and the desire of Baku and Moscow to force Armenia and the world community to recognize the truths that have emerged as a result of the illegal aggression against Armenia have not been disputed by the Western public. Moreover, in 2023 in Istanbul, the EU-USA-Russia meeting held on September 17 is considered an agreement on the occupation of Artsakh by force. At the same time, the West condemns Moscow's attempts to legitimize military gains in Ukraine. The Armenian government is the main instrument of the policy of assimilating Ukraine and Baku, promoting the Alma-Ata Declaration, according to which Crimea is Ukraine and Artsakh is not Armenia. In Ukraine, two anti-Putin propagandists of Jewish origin don't see any similarity between what happened in Artsakh and Ukraine. The statement of the new French foreign minister at the meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State means that approaches can change. The fact that French minister compares Armenia with Ukraine indicates that Paris considers Armenia a victim of illegal military aggression, the result of which cannot be considered facts. The National Council of Western Armenia reminds that the Alma-Ata Declaration is not a legal basis for protecting Armenians' rights, as Armenia was already recognized as independent in 1920 with internationally recognized borders. Citizens of Artsakh who have obtained the citizenship of Eastern Armenia cannot get an ID card in Armenia. In the Passport and Visa Department, Artsakh citizens are justified by the fact that there is no information about them or that the place of birth of Artsakh citizens should be marked by the name Azerbaijan on the ID card. The problem is that ID cards indicate the country of birth, not the city. The correspondent of Western Armenia TV asked for clarification on this issue to Migration and Citizenship Service of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The answer: this is a technical obstacle and will be solved as soon as possible. The National Council of Western Armenia reminds that since 1920, Artsakh has been an integral part of the Republic of Armenia, which was recognized in 1920 by the Supreme Council of the Allied State Powers, and that Western Armenia, even as a result of the genocide, never gave up its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Sargis Galstyan, one of the few Armenians who stayed in Artsakh after the depopulation of Artsakh, about whom it was written at one point that Baku appointed him as the guard of Stepanakert, recently returned to Eastern Armenia. He was arrested and detained by the National Security Service in Goris. Media have writes that they tried to verify this information from the National Security Service, but the National Security Service, according to tradition, was asked to send a written request. They also tried to find out from Galstyan's relatives living in Armenia whether they know that Sargis Galstyan has returned to Armenia. On this topic, the News Department of Western Armenia TV also sent a request to the National Security Service, asking whether Sargis Galstyan returned to Eastern Armenia alone or with his wife, because he stayed with his wife in Stepanakert. We will publish the answer as soon as we receive it. Now, cultural news on Goddess Anahit. the head and hand from the bronze statue of Goddess Anahit that has been kept in the British Museum will be exhibited in Yerevan from September 29 in this year. With the title of Mother Deity, Mariam from Anahit within the scope of large-scale international exhibition. The British Museum and the History Museum of Armenia signed an agreement for the loan of an exclusive exhibition. The temporary exhibition in Armenia will last 6 months. David Bogosyan, director of the History Museum of Armenia, noted that the exhibition will feature a significant selection of the Mother Goddess from the rich collections of the History Museum of Armenia, from ancient times to Christianity and today. I should note that the History Museum of Armenia previously cooperated with the British Museum and provided its collection for temporary loan within the framework of various international exhibitions. It's very interesting that one of those samples was combined with the head and hand preserved from the bronze statue of the Goddess Anahit, and immediately after that the idea was born that the opposite should also happen. That is, the head and hand of the bust should be displayed in our country. Samples from this prestigious museum will be exhibited for the first time in Armenia, especially such symbolic and museum objects of special significance for the Armenian people, said the director of the museum. John Gallagher, ambassador of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to the Republic of Armenia, emphasizing such cooperation, noted that they appreciate the strengthening of cultural relations between the two countries. This was all for today. Goodbye.
Թակավորնես մեզ համար հմում եմ ես քեզ համար գենացը թեյլի լայլե